In just days, a man will sit in this chair. A cold, steel seat in a room built for death. A black hood will slip over his head, hiding his eyes from what's coming. A paper target, pinned right over his chest, will mark the spot. And then, 3 rifles will crack the silence. Bullets will tear through the air, and when the smoke clears, history will be made. His name is Brad Sigmon, a killer who's waited more than 20 years behind bars, locked away on South Carolina's death row. On March 7th, 2025, he's set to become the first person in this country in 15 years to die by firing squad. A punishment pulled from the past, dusted off for a man who says he's ready to face it. This isn't just the end of one man's story. It's a moment that's been building, through a bloody crime, a long fight, and a choice no one saw coming. This is the tale of what he did, why he's here, and the final days counting down to a death unlike any we've seen in over a decade. It was a warm summer in 2001, down in Greenville County, South Carolina. A place where life moved slow. Porches creaked, kids played in the yards, and neighbors knew each other's names. For David and Gladys Lark, it was home. A modest house on a sleepy street, filled with the noise of 5 kids they'd raised with steady hands and warm hearts. David was 52, a mechanic who could fix anything. Gladys, 50, kept the family tight, her kitchen always smelling of something good. They'd built a quiet life, until one night, a knock at that door shattered it all. His name was Brad Sigmon, 43 years old, a man unraveling at the edges. He'd been Rebecca Lark's boyfriend, their youngest daughter, until she walked away. That rejection lit a fuse in him, one he fed with crack cocaine and a boiling rage. And on July 8, 2001, he came looking for her. Sigmon didn't knock and wait. He slipped in through an unlocked door, quiet as a shadow. David was in the recliner, maybe dozing after a long day. Gladys was down the hall, folding laundry, simple, ordinary moments. Then the bat came down, hard, again and again. Blood streaked the walls as he bludgeoned them both, room to room, a frenzy of violence that left David and Gladys dead on their own floors. But Sigmon wasn't done. Rebecca wasn't home yet. She was out, safe for a little while longer. So he waited. Hours passed, the house silent except for his breathing. When she finally walked through that door, he was ready. He grabbed her, shoved a gun to her head, and dragged her out, to his car, to a nightmare she barely survived. He drove her off, miles from home, her parents' blood still on his hands. She fought, begged, broke free, and he shot at her as she ran, bullets spitting into the dark. Somehow, she made it out alive. Sigmon didn't. 11 days later, the law caught up with him, hiding out in a Tennessee motel, his run over. Brad Sigmon's rampage left David and Gladys Lark dead, their daughter scarred, and a family ripped apart. It was a betrayal soaked in blood, a crime so brutal it set him on a path straight to death row. But how did he get from that motel to a firing squad? That's where this story turns. Less than a year after the blood dried on the Lark family's floors, Brad Sigmon stood in a courtroom, chained, cornered, and out of places to run. It was 2002, and the state of South Carolina wanted justice. The trial didn't take long. Sigmon didn't fight the facts. He couldn't. He sat there, head down, and let the words spill out. If I couldn't have her, no one could. That's what he told them. His confession, his excuse, his twisted reason for slaughtering David and Gladys Lark. The jury didn't flinch. After hours of testimony, Rebecca's tears, the crime scene photos, the bat still stained red, they came back with a verdict. Death. 2 counts. 1 for each life he'd smashed out of existence. And just like that, Brad Sigmon traded one cage for another. They shipped him to Broad River Correctional Institution, South Carolina's death row, a fortress of brick and razor wire where time slows to a crawl. For more than 20 years he's lived there. Cell 6 by 10. A cot, a sink, a window too high to see much beyond bars. Over 2 decades, Sigmon's story shifted. At least, that's what his lawyers wanted you to believe. They painted a picture. A broken kid from a rough home, beaten down by life long before that night in 2001. They said he was sick, mental illness twisting his mind, cocaine lighting the match. And in that cell, they swore he'd changed. A model prisoner, they called him. Quiet, kept to himself, found God even, scribbling prayers on scraps of paper. But the courts didn't buy it. Appeal after appeal hit the wall. Every sob story, every claim of a botched trial, every prayer for mercy. One by one, they failed. Judges didn't care about his childhood or his Bible. They saw the bat, they saw the blood, and they saw Rebecca, still haunted by the man who'd tried to erase her family. For 20 years, Brad Sigmon's been a dead man walking, locked in a box, waiting for the end. But how do you end a life like his? That's where his story takes a turn no one expected. A turn that lands him strapped to a chair, staring down the barrels of a firing squad. Fast forward to 2025, and Brad Sigmon's time is up. After 20 years of appeals and dead ends, South Carolina's ready to close the book. But here's the catch. They don't just strap him in and flip a switch. In this state, death comes with a menu. 3 options laid out like a grim lottery. The electric chair, lethal injection, or something almost forgotten. The firing squad. And Sigmon? He's the one who has to choose. His lawyers didn't sugarcoat it. They sat him down, walked him through the end. And what they told him wasn't pretty. The electric chair, Old Sparky they call it, sends 2,000 volts through a man's body. Witnesses say you can smell the flesh cooking, hear the screams before the current shuts them up. Lethal injection? Supposed to be clean, quiet. But the drugs are scarce now, and when they work, they don't always work right. Men have gasped, twitched, lingered. 20 minutes of agony while the room watches. Sigmon heard the stories. He knew the odds. And then, there was door number 3. The firing squad, straight out of a history book, dusted off for 2025. Here's how it goes. They strap him to that chair. Arms, legs, chest locked tight. A hood drops over his face so he can't see the end coming. A target, paper cheap, gets pinned right over his heart. 3 volunteers stand 15 feet away, rifles loaded. 1 bullet's a blank, so no one knows who fires the kill shot. Quick, they say. Over in seconds. South Carolina built a whole new death chamber for it. $54,000 of steel and concrete, just to bring this old punishment back. For Brad Sigmon, it wasn't even a question. Burn alive? Writhe in a chemical mess? Or take the bullets and be done? He picked the firing squad, the only option left that promised a fast exit. But why was this his only way out? And what happens when those rifles fire? That's coming next. Today is February 26th, 2025. The air's cold in South Carolina, but inside Broad River Correctional, the heat's on Brad Sigmon. Less than 2 weeks stand between him and that firing squad. 10 days to be exact. March 7th is circled in red, a date that's closing in fast. And right now, it's a race against time. One last shot to cheat death. In these final days, it's all desperation. His lawyers are throwing everything they've got left. They've hauled his case up to the South Carolina Supreme Court, begging for a second look. Their argument? His trial back in 2002 was a mess. Lawyers who dropped the ball, missed chances to save him. They say he never got a fair shake. At the same time, they're knocking on another door, Governor Henry McMaster's. A plea for mercy, a long shot to commute his sentence to life. But here's the cold truth. No governors spared a death row inmate in South Carolina in 49 years. Not since 1976 has a man walked away from that fate. McMaster's got a reputation. Tough, unflinching. The odds are stacked high against Sigmon, and everyone knows it. Inside his cell, Sigmon's praying, maybe for forgiveness, maybe for a miracle. Down the hall, his legal team's scrambling, burning the midnight oil, chasing any crack in the system. And outside these walls, the world's watching. On X, the buzz is electric. Some call it a historic moment, the first firing squad in 15 years. Others see blood and vengeance, cheering for the Lark family. A few cry foul, calling it a step back to the Dark Ages. Everyone's got an opinion, and the noise is deafening. With 10 days on the clock, the tension's thick enough to choke on. Will the courts budge? Will the governor blink? Or will those rifles fire as planned? For Brad Sigmon, these are the last chances, the final breaths before the end comes calling. Brad Sigmon's story doesn't end with him. Zoom out, and you see something bigger, something that reaches far beyond that concrete cell in South Carolina. On March 7th, 2025, when those rifles fire, it won't just be the first firing squad in 15 years. It'll be a marker, a line drawn in the dirt of a country wrestling with how it kills its killers. The last time this happened was 2010. Ronnie Lee Gardner, strapped to a chair in Utah, 5 bullets to the chest. People thought it was the end of an era, an old, ugly way to die, left behind. But now it's back. States like South Carolina are dusting off the past because the present's falling apart. Lethal injection, the quiet, clinical choice. Can't get the drugs anymore. Companies won't sell them. Courts won't force it. So the options shrink, and the old methods creep in. And here's where the nation splits wide open. Is this justice or barbarism? Out on the streets, you hear it both ways. Protesters march, shouting for mercy, calling it a savage relic. Others stand firm. David and Gladys Lark's blood demands an answer, and bullets are it. On March 7th, when those shots ring out, it won't just be Brad Sigmon's end. It'll be a mirror, held up to all of us. A nation that kills this way after all these years. What does it say about who we are? About what we've become? In less than 2 weeks, Brad Sigmon's fate will be sealed. 11 days from now, on March 7th, 2025, the clock runs out. Will that firing squad line up, hood on, rifles raised, and pull the trigger? Or will mercy, some last-second twist, step in and rewrite the ending? Right now, no one knows. But what happens next? We'll be here to tell you. Stay with us as this story unfolds. Every update, every turn, right up to the final shot. And if you want to see it through, hit that subscribe button now. Time's ticking, and we're not going anywhere.